Hello, this is John, and you found my channel, John Reviews It. So, today we're going to talk about XLR versus RCA. Which is actually better, and can you hear a difference? Well, I had made an earlier video saying how I was going to give my impressions on this. Well, here's what I can tell you. I personally, and this is just me, I couldn't hear too much of a difference. However, depending on what XLR cable I use, then I started to hear some differences. For example, these Shunyata Research Delta XLR cables. I could definitely hear a little bit of a difference between these guys versus these guys. Now, when I did do this experiment, I kind of did it in stereo format as opposed to like a 5-channel audio setup. So all this comparison was done listening more so to music than anything. Needless to say, must say I'm not disappointed with how the RCAs performed. RCAs have always been a good way to connect stuff. I also know these Blue Jean cables are pretty good quality, so they held their own. These held their own, but where I think somebody would probably honestly notice a huge difference is probably going to have to come down to the length of run of the cable. Now, these cables were sitting in at 7 foot long. These were not quite as long. I will be honest with you, these are more like about 4.5 feet, about 5 feet long, because they're 1.5 meters, not quite 2. So a little over 3 feet. I'd probably say they're probably more like almost 4.5, maybe 5 feet long at best. But personally, I didn't hear much of a difference, and that's just my ear. I can't speak for everybody else out there. So what I would simply tell you is, you only have the option to use RCA, you're kind of stuck with that. If you have an option to use XLR, I say go for it. There are a bunch of good cable companies out there. You can find all kinds of varying qualities of RCA cables, just like you can XLR cables. You can find little cheap RCA cables that maybe cost about $5–10. And I'm sure you can find some out there that cost way more than $200 for a set of 5, like these Blue Jean cables. Same goes for the XLR cables. On the low end, I made a previous video where I highly recommended the Emotivas if you're looking for something on the low end. At about $35 a cable. And you can sometimes find some XLR cables that cost in the thousands of dollars. And what I thought was a pretty premium cable for the price point were the Mogami Platinums, which actually use silver connectors going to the cables inside of them. And they're also pretty well made, nice thick construction, not quite as thick as these guys, but very well made cables nonetheless. All that being said, go out there, experiment, try it. Is there somebody out there who's going to hear a difference? Probably. Did I hear a difference? Not really. Would I have probably heard a difference if the runs had to be longer than maybe 7 foot or more? Probably. Where I heard a lot of XLR cables start losing a little bit of their degradation is once you start getting like about 40, 50 feet long, then you might notice some of the signal change a little bit. I'm not sure what type of specs stand for, or what type of specs you can find out there on RCA cables, but I would imagine they probably can't get nowhere near as close to a length of run without an issue like an XLR cable. So I would say what you use definitely has to do with where your equipment's set up. If you got equipment kind of all over the place and some that have to make some distance runs, go XLR. If you don't have to make such long distance runs, you can probably go RCA and be happy. Me personally, even though I ain't got long distance runs, I'm still going XLR because I just feel it's a much more solid connection, and I already have a bunch of XLR cables. So as for me, these guys, they probably won't be hanging out with me much longer. I will most likely have either put these up for sale or have sold them by the time you actually see this video on YouTube. If you think I might still have them, you're welcome to comment down below and I'll tell you if I still have them or not. And if I do and you're interested in them, cool, maybe we can arrange something. I do live in the Houston, Texas area, so if you're local down here, I'm more than happy to sell to somebody locally. If you're not here locally, we'll see how that goes. I have a good feeling that these will probably be sold by the time this video drops. Other than that, like and subscribe. Till next video.